By now, we all know the players at the heart of the market basket feud, the disenfranchised workforce calling for the return of Arthur T. Demoulas, who was dethroned by rival cousin Arthur S. Demoulas and his band of fellow board members. Today, a new player emerged. The parent company of Hannaford supermarkets is reportedly interested in buying all or part of the market basket empire, but there's no word on whether it would consider reinstating Arthur T. Also today, Attorney General and gubernatorial hopeful Martha Coakley set up a dedicated hotline for market basket employees, citing an uptick in calls since the board slashed hours for part-time workers. Market Basket's new CEO asked store directors to emphasize that employees are not being laid off, but it's clear tensions are at an all-time high. This is a story we've been closely covering on WGBH News, and joining us now to add some perspective is Nancy Koehn. She's a Harvard Business School historian and a regular guest on Boston Public Radio. And welcome back to Greater Boston.
Thank you, Emily.
I think this is an interesting twist with Hannaford, because while Arthur T. has offered to buy out the cousin at 50.5% of his shares, something like that, Hannaford is basically putting the same offer on the table. And would it be more likely if you were Arthur S., you'd say, you know what? Screw the cousin, I'm going to go with Hannaford and make everybody go away.
He might indeed choose to do that. I mean, he's had supposedly a number of offer possibilities that have at least floated in over the transom, including, most prominently, Arthur T. He may decide to do that. I think we still have this looming, Shakespearean question, which is the drama now is all caught up in what employees and customers will do given any kind of change in ownership or management at this point. So if you're Hannaford, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, I'll buy this and customers and employees will flock back? Are you buying it saying we're going to have to give the CEO mantle or scepter back to Arthur T? I think there's these really important questions about the people that make this business successful, which are loyal, locally based customers and very loyal, now very, very dug in and, vocal employees. So for both Arthur S. and Hannaford, those are big open questions.
So the new CEOs have been sending out regular messages, I should say. They're not warnings, they're not tis-tis, but they're kind of like informational nuggets to employees and saying, look, why don't you come back? Essentially, that's what they're saying. Come on back in. We'll work this all out. We'll get all of our managers to start ordering the supplies again, fill the shelves, the customers will come back, you'll have your job, and let us sort this out. Is that a good message?
I think that's a perfectly reasonable message. I mean, if you can't, if the co-CEOs, cannot bring back Arthur T., then what do you say? You say, we care about you. We want to keep the great culture on both sides of the cash register alive here, our employees and our customers. Let's get back to work. I think the fascinating thing is that employees and customers are still basically staying away. I understand from talking to someone who was in Tewksbury that lots of stores still don't have much on the shelves. So 71 stores, 25,000 employees, not much happening, in the bare pantry. That's a really big deal. You'd like to know what the cash hemorrhage is on all this.
One of the things I think we're so fascinated by this, because it's such an anomaly in the business world that managers and employees and customers all feel the same way about a CEO. He goes to their bar mitzvahs, their weddings, and if they're got health problems, he visits them. Would this be the same if this were a union shop? Because it's not. If there was this kind of turmoil and would there be this kind of a loyalty walkout? I mean, or is that kind of irrelevant to it?
I doubt it, because I think organized labor against organized management, or in some kind of often opposing countenance or posture, often ends up with lots of division. Here, what you have is a family-run company in which a very, very interesting, and some would say old-style kind of business or capitalism succeeded, beyond measure. That is, employees came to work, they stayed at their jobs, their kids came into the family, some become married, found their spouses at the company. Generations worked for Demoulas. They were paid well. They're still paid well. They have good benefits. They get bonuses. And then enter Arthur T., who, you know, walks around and comes to their bar mitzvahs and asks about their autistic children. And you have a very, very interesting, very successful recipe for a business that's run very differently than the harsh, turbocharged flywheel of lots of corporate America. And I think a lot of what our employees and customers are, in a sense, reaching for in all this is, yes, Arthur T., but also what he and Demoulas represent. All
right, so Nancy, you're the mediator. I'm calling you in. You got Arthur S. on one side, Arthur T. on the other. How would you mediate this?
Well, you know, I saw that just very recently, in the last few days, Arthur T. said, I'll come in and hold the reins of operations without any necessary long-term commitment while we figure out how to bring this business back. I think if I were a mediator, I'd try and get Arthur S. and the co-CEOs, Thornton and Gooch, to accept that. And then see what we can do once we have a functioning supply chain, once we have full shelves, and once we have customers that are coming into the Demoulas they know and love.
All right, I'll give them your number. Nancy Koehn, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.